So this is the LibTech Lost 2020 Mayhem Rocket, or LibTech Lost Rocket 2020. And just doing a quick on the table thing, quick for me. First off, a couple things changed for 2020 in comparison to what we rode in 2018. And it seems like it was the same model, pardon me, in 2019. First off, multiple sizes now. There's a 153.5, there's a 157.5, and 161.5. There used to be only a 157.5, and that sizing seemed to kind of had a slightly different shape than this 157.5 has now. The waist is taken in a little bit, same length, but there's a little more taper, just a little more directional, a little more broad in, and then the 161 is a little wider. The 53 is considerably narrower. I felt like sizing wise, I was kind of in between the the 57.5 and 53.5. Kind of wanted to get the 53.5, but felt like this was more indicative of the everyman's ride. And some of our wider riders, wider-footed, mid-wide riders will be stoked on that. Second off, the camber profile really changed from what I saw with the Rocket we rode in 2018, I think. Before, it felt like it had a lot more camber, or at least the one we tried. Now it has this kind of early rise camber that's very similar to the LibTech BRD, the Bird. And you can see it just kind of like camber in between the inserts, then transitioning to a mellow early rise rocker. Each board will bend a little differently. You might get one that points up a little more, like my Bird does, but you can see right about the lib in the Lost writing, the Lost font, you can see it starts to rise up, and that's going to create, do two things. It's going to make it more forgiving, and it's going to give it much better float in powder than if it was full camber. The one detraction is it's not going to carve and spring out of a turn as much as it used to, but it's still very doable and very fun. It just takes a more directional, as you can see, more surf kind of style to snowboarding than the LibTech Bird. Just a touch more taper, just a little bit more of a surf style shape, but this can just carve groomers hard. Not as hard as it used to, but still definitely on the upper end of the spectrum, and be fun there. But now it's rounded out more when it comes to powder and being a little more forgiving, kind of more of a modern shape, kind of that alternative free ride world. I want to show you the Sidecut. You can kind of see here, it's a very, very, very mellow mag. It's like the kind of mag that's almost non-existent. It seems like just a regular Sidecut to me. I can barely see any disruption. Sometimes I don't even know if I'm actually seeing it or not. So this is like the furthest end of the spectrum of Mervin Sidecuts, right? Mervin meaning LibTech and GNU. Then there's like that 0.25 mag. It's very mellow and faint, but you can see it. Then there's like that 0.5 mag that you see on a lot of boards. That's kind of like borderline between being really good in icy snow and just being a hard snow specialist. And then there's that full mag that just really grips. This is barely there, but what we found is that it kind of fits on that border between medium and hard snow. It can hang in hard snow pretty well. When I was on hard snow, it did a good job. But let's get into a couple things that we always do on, that we're doing these days, thanks to some reader requests. They want to know the width over the inserts to kind of see how it matches with their boots. Don't ask me if it'll fit you based on your boot width, but I can give you an idea here. You're looking at about 26.8, 26.9 on the front insert of the back, if that makes sense, and 27.6, 27.7, somewhere around there. And then you're looking on the front insert off the back one, you're looking at just about 27.5, and then you're looking at just about 28.5 off the front. Now, if you, with this new, hybrid camber profile with early rise in the nose and tail, you can see here again, it has a lot more float and a lot more directional float than it used to, at least the one we tried when we compared it to like some Kuro boards, like the Puzzle we had at the time, and now, but now like more relevant, like let's say the Dart or the Pencil, two of our favorites too. Those were such better floaters than the Rocket, but now the Rocket's like caught up and pretty close. It might be maybe just a shade behind. Those like border on being like 5 out of 5. I'd say they're like a 4.75. They're just amazing floaters. You could use them as dedicated powder boards. This is really solid. It's right up there with the Bird, but just more, where the Bird's a little more traditional free ride, kind of sinks the tail a little more, really more quicker turning and a little more traditional free ride, where this has a little bit more of a feel like you're surfing, a little bit wider platform, a little more surface area for even for a 57.5 versus the 59 that I would ride. But or if you're looking at the 161 wide or 162 wide from the Bird, that might be closer. But anyways, setting this all the way back, but anyways, it's just a great powder board now, and it's definitely on the upper end and could be used as your dedicated powder board. Where before I felt it was good for those who like camber and really like popping and really understand how to keep their speed and float. That would have been amazing for camber lovers and powder. But for most of us who want that little bit of extra ease and easy float, this hybrid camber profile is really going to kill it. But Setback with traditional disc bindings, you're looking at 23.5 inches, which is a little wide, so I'm going to have to kind of slide this and slide this down and slide this up. But you're pretty far back on board. You can see the difference between nose to here and the center of this tail to here is 7.25 inches, I believe. Let me double check here. Yeah, and then that makes it 3.625 inches back from center of the board. So you're definitely getting some directional float. But check this out. So look at this tail though. Going from that point, it doesn't really feel fair because it feels like the tail's kind of more here. So you're actually getting a little bit more setback on board than you would think. And I did some measurements there too, and I took notes. Yeah, so the difference from nose to here and tail to here is 9.5. You're getting 4.25 inches back on board, which is pretty far. So it's probably somewhere in between there, because this really isn't like a massive tail. It's kind of like almost like it's chopped here and they just put a little bit. That's going to sink better. But it's definitely got a lot more directional float. So that combo is really going to make it a floater, and that's so cool. Then you have this base, and it's not waxed yet. I'm going to wax it later when the mood strikes, but pretty soon, because I want to keep it pretty and keep it maintained. You can just see it's just all black. The die cut is so well done, I can barely feel it. I love that. Also, the base, this board has a stiffer flex than the one I tried, but it's still in that medium stiff kind of range, probably more on the medium stiff side. And the base keeps its speed pretty well. It's a nice smooth base. It's maybe not the fastest of fast that I've ever tried, like some of the Gentem stick bases and even some of the high-end Jones snowboard bases are just, they just got to glide to it in all conditions. But this really doesn't have, like all Libtech bases really don't have low lows, but they don't always have the highest of highs. But if you wax this bass semi-consistently and you know, kind of match it to the conditions, you're going to get really good glide, and it'll be fine coming out of a long, you know, long flat area after maybe an off-piste powder run. So it'll do well enough. But all in all, I mean, it's just such, I'm just so stoked to see this hybrid camber profile coming out in more boards. I don't feel like their full C3 should disappear, because that still serves a great purpose for those who really want a special, super springy, you know, just amazingly poppy for air and carving kind of board. That's what C3 does really well. But this kind of like C3.1 or, you know, C3E, C3 early rise, whatever you want to call it, is really cool, because it really makes it better for those who kind of want one board for every condition. It might not do carving and it might not pop as much as full C3, but then it's a little more forgiving and it floats a little better. So it's just kind of like, you know, what's better for you. But for us, and to recommend one board for every condition, like if you know, more of a surf style rider, and you like that directional kind of slashy carvy feel, but you want one board, this is a great solution now. Where before it was almost like in the deepest of deep, you could do a little better. Now it's, you know, it's good enough. Great, you know, it could be a dedicated powder board.